Number 10. Ancient sarcophagi. In Israel, while construction workers were working to build a new animal park at the Ramat Gan Safari Park, they discovered a pair of matching sarcophagi from about 1800 years ago. What's really strange is that the sarcophagi were actually found 25 years before, and then covered up. Workers at the safari didn't know what to do with the creepy sarcophagi, so they just kind of put them out of the way and buried them under sand, and they were just simply forgotten. 25 years later, when the contractors began digging, they found the ancient coffin sticking out of the soil. Now they have finally been taken back for analysis by proper archaeological authorities. From what the experts have gathered so far, the coffins likely came from the 3rd century AD, during the Roman period. And even though the coffins look pretty spooky, they didn't hold the bodies of any cursed mummies or anything like that. Instead, they were probably made for a couple, a husband and wife. How they ended up buried under a safari park almost 2,000 years ago is still a mystery. Number 9. Aztec cannibals. Excavations from the small Aztec town of Tecoaqui have revealed some true horrors from the ancient world. According to the evidence, Spanish conquistadors butchered around a dozen women and their children in this small Aztec town. Why did the Spanish conquistadors do such a terrible thing? It was revenge for something that happened a few months earlier, when the inhabitants of the town captured a detachment of Spaniards and ate them. Yeesh. The residents of the town captured a pretty sizable convoy, about 15 male Spaniards, 50 women, 10 children, and a collection of soldiers from Cuba and Africa. There were also about 350 allied indigenous with the Spaniards. In total, around 500 people were captured. This happened in the year 1520. Then, over the space of a few months, each and every person was sacrificed and eaten. Conquistador Hernan Cortes heard about the atrocity and ordered the town destroyed as revenge. 600 years later, archaeologists discovered evidence that the townsfolk knew vengeance was coming, and they got rid of the Spaniards' bones and tried to destroy the evidence. Apparently, they didn't do the best job at this. Excavations found shattered and chopped remains, the ruins of burned temples, decapitated statues, and all the other horrifying remnants of both the cannibalism and the revenge attack, thereby painting a pretty complete view of the story. Number 8. Vampire skull. The ghoulish remains of an actual vampire from medieval Europe have been discovered in Venice. According to Italian archaeologists, they've exhumed the corpse of a woman from the 16th century who was believed to be a vampire by whoever put her in the ground. She was buried inside a mass grave on the small island of Lazaretto Nuovo, a place which had been used to get rid of victims of the plague. Somebody had shoved a rock in the woman's mouth as a way to prevent her from chewing her way out of the ground and infecting people with the disease. I guess that's one way of doing it. Among all the remains found, she appeared to be the only one showing signs that people really believed she must have been one of the bloodsuckers. It's important to understand that this was back around 1576, when the plague killed 50,000 people in Venice. And at the time, people were not only terrified of catching the deadly disease, everyone was also terrified of vampires. It was believed that some corpses rose from the grave and bit people to infect them with the horrifying disease. Of course, nobody has ever actually risen from the grave in the history of humanity, but the belief still persists in some places to this day. As for the poor vampire woman, nobody knows who she was in life. Considering her skeleton was found with the rock still wedged between her teeth, either it worked to keep her dead or she was never actually a vampire in the first place. What do you think of the story behind this lady with a rock in her mouth? What do you think she did that made people believe she was a vampire? Let us know what you think in the comment section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. The city of Amarna. The city of Tel El Amarna was once a great capital of ancient Egypt. The city was founded by the pharaoh Akhenaten and his queen wife Nefertiti, but it was not around for long. At the time, the pharaoh had usurped the original pantheon of Egyptian gods in favor of a single deity known as Aten. It took only 15 years for the city to be built, populated, and abandoned. When the pharaoh died in 1332 BCE, belief in the god Aten was eradicated, and the old gods came back into the world. It was definitely a strange time in Egyptian history, but recent research has unveiled something horrifying. By digging in the cemeteries in Amarna, researchers found graves of around 6,000 people. They studied human remains from 400 of them and discovered a large majority of the people who had died in the city were mostly children and teenagers. Curiously, they didn't find that many adults or infants. This has suggested that the pharaoh acquired a small army of kids and teens to build his failed city for him. According to the Archaeology News Network, about 90% of the skeletons exhumed so far have been between the ages of 7 and 25, though the vast majority were younger than 15. The suggestion here is that almost all of the city was populated by teenagers, probably forced into labor. It would explain why the city rose and fell in just 15 years. You can't exactly build a society based on nothing but kids. Number 6. Mysterious animal heads. In Bulgaria, a mysterious archaeological site has been found filled with strange rock carvings of animal heads. It's been dubbed the Rock Herd. Nobody knows when the carvings were made or who exactly sculpted them, but they are pretty disturbing. The archaeological site itself consists of a monument decorated on all sides with carvings of animal heads arranged in a circle. Most of the heads are from animals like cattle and goats, though some of them appear to be unknown monsters. Unfortunately, the monument is already crumbling apart. It's extremely old and has been heavily eroded. Some of the animal head sculptures have already broken off the main monument, and those that remain are in pretty rough shape. Nearby is the old city of Sliven, which boasted a lengthy medieval history. However, scientists don't know what connection there is between the animal heads and the old city. Number 5. Ancient cockroach. One of the most terrifying things you could possibly imagine was just discovered, preserved in a piece of amber. The body of a strange new species of predatory cockroach that lived 100 million years ago was found almost perfectly preserved inside the chunk of fossilized tree resin. It's a small monster, measuring less than an inch long, and scientists say it looks like a weird mixture between a praying mantis and a cockroach. At first, researchers were almost sure the cockroach might have been a mantis. But Dr. Peter Varnsky from the Geological Institute of Bratislava from the Slavic Academy of Sciences took a closer look and revealed something different. After the first look, I knew it was something new. Nothing similar runs on Earth today, he told BBC Earth. In its life, the prehistoric insect would have actually been quite ferocious. It had a triangular head, large eyes to see its victims, a long, intimidating neck for its size, mighty wings, and mouthparts that it used to tear apart unfortunate prey. Where was such a creepy specimen discovered? It was found by the German researcher Ziggy Ellenberger in Myanmar. Scientists don't know everything about the insect just yet, but they are confident it could be an ancient ancestor of modern cockroaches. It was just a lot scarier, with longer limbs and a head like a praying mantis. This is not the kind of cockroach you would want crawling around in your walls today. It was at least twice as scary as the cockroaches still alive, albeit significantly smaller. Number 4. Dancing skeleton. In 2017, in the east of Russia, the mysterious grave of a man who died in the Dark Ages was discovered. The man inside the grave has come to be known as the dancing skeleton. This is because, when archaeologists exhumed him, he appeared to be dancing. It wasn't that his bones were jiggling around inside his coffin. Instead, he had been interred on his back with his legs in a bizarre position that made him look frozen in the middle of an epic dance move. His feet were crossed, his knees were open, and it looked like he died trying to pull off some Michael Flatley Lord of the Dance type stuff. What a way to go. But this guy probably wasn't actually dancing straight to his doom and death. According to forensic experts, the reason his legs were discovered in such a weird position is that he was probably tied up when he died. Had he not been tied, his extremities would have straightened after death. Researchers now believe he was shot by an arrow, tied up like a prisoner, then dumped in a grave. Quite different from the original and lighter assumption. Number 3. The warrior god. In Iraq, archaeologists found a cultic area where, 5,000 years ago, the local Mesopotamians practiced animal sacrifices and bizarre rituals, which were dedicated to a mysterious warrior god. The archaeological site is called Girsu, which translates roughly to the sacred city. Archaeologists excavated hundreds of unique artifacts, including ceramics and animal bones, from near a ritual pit. This pit measured over 8 feet or almost 2.5 meters deep. Based on the collected evidence, researchers are confident that the ceramics, cups, and goblets found in the area were used in a religious feast, while the bones found are leftovers of sacrificed animals, like sheep and pig. Researchers also found a bronze figurine in the shape of a duck that they believe was made to represent the goddess Nanshi, associated with marshlands and aquatic birds. They also found fragments of artifacts inscribed with the name Ningirsu, the warrior god of the city Girsu, who was the farmer's version of a thunder god. You could think of him like the Mesopotamian Thor. Nobody knows if any human sacrifices were made here or what exactly the rituals entailed, but it was probably some pretty freaky stuff. Do you have any ideas? Number 2. Shaman pouch. Scientists have discovered a shamanic pouch from about 1,000 years ago in Bolivia. Inside the shaman's pouch, which was crafted from fox snout, were traces of a very powerful hallucinogenic drug. But wait, because it wasn't just one drug. Scientists found a variety of hallucinogenic plants that had been blended together to create a compound which would give the shaman a seriously groovy trip. As you may already know, the ancient shamans of South America were basically just on acid all the time, only this was natural acid, chemicals from psychotropic plants found all throughout the Amazon jungle. The pouch was found inside a small cave, likely left behind as part of a human burial. There was more than just one pouch as well. There was an entire bundle found stashed in a leather bag. There were 2 sniffing tablets, pestle and mortar type tools, used to crush plants into a sniffable powder. There was also something called a snuffing tube, which would have been used by the shaman to smoke the hallucinogenic plants. If you thought you had fun in college, just wait until you hear the list of ingredients found inside the pouch. There was cocaine, DMT, and psilocin from magic mushrooms. It was basically an ayahuasca cocktail, but even more potent. Whoa. Number 1. Mummified child. Researchers from Northwestern University have used X-rays to take a closer look at an ancient Egyptian mummy without needing to remove her linen wrappings. The mummy dates back 1,900 years. She was only 5 years old when turned into a mummy, and she was found back in 1911 in Hawara, Egypt. Using the special X-ray scanners, researchers found a scarab amulet meant to protect her body as she journeyed into the afterlife, stuck inside of her. The amulet had actually been left inside her body. This was the first time researchers were able to examine an intact mummy without ruining the wrapping. And it could lead to a new wave of scary discoveries as scientists begin looking beyond the molten mummy flesh to see what kinds of treasures are buried literally inside the mummies. If a random little girl had a fancy amulet inside of her, there's no telling what kind of amazing artifacts could be inside more prestigious mummies. After all, scientists hadn't really considered doing surgery on mummies before to look for artifacts, and now they don't have to. They can just scan them. Number 11. Human skull. If you Google Fisherman and human skull, a disturbing number of different stories will pop up. But this one is quite the coincidence. In 2007, British fisherman Barry Hunter caught one of the strangest and most shocking things ever. He was fishing in the North Sea when something extra tumbled out of his net with the other fish. A piece of human skull. Being a law-abiding citizen and a decent human being, he took the remains to the police, who, after some investigating, learned the bit of the skull belonged to someone named Brian Allison. When they told Barry the news, he couldn't believe it. This was actually his friend. Brian Allison, along with his brother Robert Temple, went missing in 2004. When their vessel sank off the northeast coast near Tynemouth. The boat's wreckage was found, but no trace of either man was ever discovered. Until 2007, in the net of Allison's friend, Barry Hunter. I'm not a mathematician, but the odds of that have to be astronomical. For an extra twist, the news of the identification reached Brian's mother on the day of what would have been Robert's 37th birthday. The strange circumstances of this story are almost hard to believe. Number 10. Cold War missile. One of the weirdest things caught in the ocean was pulled out of the water 14 miles off the coast of Washington. The thing was encrusted with barnacles and wrapped in seaweed. It also came from the Cold War. This thing looked like a missile, and it was discovered by Eric Eid, who had pulled it on board his trawler inside a fishing net. At first, he thought it was a bomb from World War II, but once he got the thing on board and took a better look at it, he found Cyrillic letters underneath the barnacles. Cyrillic is the Russian alphabet. As you can imagine, Eric was pretty alarmed. He phoned the US Coast Guard and they showed up in record time, sending a helicopter to fly over the location and see what was going on. After all, it's not every day someone catches a Russian missile in the ocean off the coast of Washington. It was actually the Navy who ordered Eric to take his trawler to Port Angeles immediately. There, the Navy took the device and told Eric it was some kind of communication machine from the Cold War, though they didn't really say what it had been used for exactly or why it looked an awful lot like a missile. Number 9. The Deep Chimaera. During a research trip to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge way back in 2004, scientists caught a rather bizarre animal from the deepest part of the ocean. The creature is known as a deep-sea chimera, a type of weird fish closely related to sharks. The biggest difference is that the chimera and the shark branched off from the same evolutionary tree about 400 million years before today. The chimera is in fact a type of cartilaginous fish, meaning its body is made up of hard cartilage instead of bone. They live deep in the ocean at depths of up to 8,500 feet, which is why it's so rare for anyone to see one. Never mind to catch one. It gets its name from the hybrid creature of Greek mythology that had the head and body of a lion, a goat on its back, and a tail that ended with the head of a snake. So maybe this fish isn't quite as creepy, but it's still weird. These fish can grow up to almost 5 feet in length, and there are quite a few different species. What really separates the chimera from the shark is its mouth. Instead of having jaws lined with sharp teeth, the chimera has 3 pairs of grinding tooth plates that it uses to pulverize its meals and rip them apart, almost like dull saw blades. Number 8. The real Loch Ness Monster? At Loch Ness in Scotland, monster hunting enthusiasts used a specialized marine drone to look through the deepest depths of the infamous loch to try to find the most elusive beast in all of nature. And, believe it or not, they really did find a monster. But according to ABC News, it wasn't the one they were looking for. While scanning through the murky darkness for any sign of Nessie, the research team caught sight of something that looked familiar. Upon closer inspection, they realized they had caught the Loch Ness Monster, only this one wasn't alive. It was a nearly 30-foot-long replica used in a film from the 1970s that was sunk in the loch 50 years ago. But what could this mean for the truth of the Loch Ness Monster? Are the sightings of the mystical beast really just based on some plastic prop at the bottom of the loch? Well, probably not, seeing as the prop had its inflatable humps removed before it sank. But still, it was quite the coincidence. The team also discovered a giant shipwreck on the bottom of the loch, but no slithering green monster. Number 7. A giant grouper. A teenage girl went fishing near Marco Island, off the coast of Florida. She was with her brother, her mother, and her stepfather. At only 16 years old, she wasn't expecting to hook any kind of extraordinary fish, yet she managed to reel in a monstrous Goliath grouper that weighed an estimated 583 pounds. To make this story even more incredible, it was only the girl's second time fishing. She told local news that the biggest fish she had caught previously was an ordinary salmon. This kid is obviously a natural when it comes to fishing. There are skilled fishermen out there who could barely grapple with a grouper of this size. And yet, she had the monster hooked and in the boat in just 15 minutes. The girl only weighed 115 pounds, about 5 times less than the fish. The sheer strength of her breaks every rule of physics. Perhaps, in the moment, she somehow gave herself superhuman powers to pull the grouper out of the water? Here's the second amazing thing about the catch. According to the International Game Fish Association, the heaviest Goliath grouper ever caught by a woman weighed only 366 pounds, and it was caught back in 1965. As for the overall world record, that was 680 pounds. So this 16-year-old came pretty close to breaking literally all the records. Number 6. A dead body. While trawling in the Arctic Ocean, a group of fishermen pulled up one thing nobody ever wants to have on their boat: a dead body. The ship was sailing slightly north of Norway when the crew made the grisly discovery. At first, they thought it was just a pile of old clothes in the back of the net. They realized they were wrong when the crewmen took a closer look and saw body parts inside the pieces of clothing. It was such a dramatic discovery that the crew had to head to the mainland for the corpse to be handed over to the police and identified. Here's where things get spooky. The place where the body was found is between the international waters of Norway and Russia, in a kind of gray zone. According to The Independent, people have been going missing in these remote waters in recent years, suggesting the body may have belonged to a murder victim. Then again, it could just be a fisherman who drank a bit too much and fell off his boat. Number 5. Attack of the Orcas. On the morning of March 16th, a whale-watching vessel caught something absolutely amazing and horrifying at the same time. The vessel was navigating through the Bremer Canyon system, a collection of marine trenches a few dozen miles from Bremer Bay, Australia. Those on board witnessed a group of orca whales working together to hunt and take down a blue whale. Something so rare that this is the first time such an event was ever caught on video. The blue whale was only a juvenile, about 50 feet long. Adults can usually grow to be at least 90 feet. The waters were filled to the brim with around 70 killer whales, each of them performing a specific job in the hunting ritual. They actually bullied the huge blue whale into a shallow part of the continental shelf, the way ancient humans used to drive antelope off cliffs. The attack went on for hours in full view of the luckiest whale watchers ever. Or unluckiest, depending on which way you see it. The orcas continued biting at the blue whale's face, keeping it exactly where they wanted. Eventually, there was a great bubble of red that burst on the surface like a balloon full of blood. Some flesh floated for a few seconds, then everything was gone. Scientists know that killer whales can hunt together, but an actual hunt like this has never before been fully documented, until now. And yeah, nature is frightening. Number 4. Mermaid in a net. Back in 2012, Animal Planet uploaded a video of what appeared to be a mermaid caught in a net. There were no details provided of where the fishing vessel was when it captured the alleged mermaid. Nobody knows where the footage came from, but it was obviously shocking. The video footage showed a group of fishermen pulling up a net, just like on any other ordinary day. But when they got close to the net, something inside it began to freak out. The men started screaming, the thing inside the net was flailing around, and then its hand burst through the holes of the net. And this was the real shocker, because the hand seemed to be webbed, like how you would imagine a mermaid's hand to look. The fishermen panicked and dropped the net back into the ocean, and the mermaid was never seen again. The video has never been officially confirmed by scientists, but it's still haunting the internet today as some of the best potential proof of the existence of mermaids. Number 3. Pregnant shark. Off the coast of Taiwan, fishermen caught a great white shark that measured over 12 feet in length. But that wasn't the only shocking thing about the great beast. It was also pregnant, found to be carrying 14 baby sharks. This is an incredibly rare thing to witness in the wild, as pregnant sharks are almost never caught. Plus, the shark was a variable giant. The fisherman who caught it sold the monstrous specimen for $2,000. And a researcher in ocean biodiversity who saw the shark said that in 20 years of marine ecology, it was the biggest great white they had ever seen in their life. As brutal and cruel as the catch was, seeing as the shark was pregnant, it gave researchers a unique chance to study the reproductive mode of the great white shark, something that hasn't really been done before. Inside her belly were 14 fully formed babies. The great white actually lays eggs, and then the babies grow inside of her, something unique in the animal kingdom. Number 2. Monster tuna. Off the coast of Texas, a fisherman broke state records after catching the biggest bluefin tuna ever. The monster fish weighed an outstanding 876 pounds and measured over 10 feet long. The battle for the fish began at roughly 9 o'clock in the morning. Right away, Troy Lancaster from Port Aransas realized he had something huge on the end of his line. He struggled with the fish until just after 6 p.m. It took over 8 hours to reel the bugger in, though the last hour was apparently the worst because the fish had already given up and stopped fighting back. For a full 60 minutes, Lancaster had to reel in the dead weight of the fish. After getting the huge tuna to shore, it was measured and confirmed by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to be the largest tuna ever captured in the state. The previous record was in 1985 with a fish that weighed 70 pounds less. This tuna was about 19 years old, and according to Newsweek, could be worth almost $3 million. Number 1. Flying spaghetti monster. The flying spaghetti monster was recently caught at a depth of 4,000 feet in the Atlantic Ocean, filmed by a remote control underwater vehicle. If you're not sure what the flying spaghetti monster is, it's the deity of a parody religion known as the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. The people who participate in the mock religion claim to believe in a giant flying spaghetti monster made up of, well, spaghetti and meatballs, ramen. But nobody ever thought the creature really existed. Of course, this wasn't a deity, but what was the strange creature caught at the bottom of the ocean that looked like a mass of floating spaghetti? According to experts from the National Oceanography Center, it was a type of siphonophore, a creature kind of like a jellyfish made up of colonies of thousands of much smaller individual creatures. That's why it looks like a monster made out of spaghetti strands. It's rare to find one that looks this way, and even just rare to see them at all because they live so deep in the ocean. Number 10. The Earth's largest geoglyph. A set of lines have been found in the Thar Desert of India thanks to Google Maps. And apparently, they could just be part of the biggest geoglyph that's ever been discovered. The designs are sprawling, formed out of earth and stone, and unlike anything ever found in the country before. These lines are similar to the ones that have been found in both Peru and Kazakhstan, and yet vastly different while still maintaining an uncanny resemblance. The patterns cover a space of about 51 acres and are carved about 4 inches or 10 centimeters deep into the ground. According to Life Science, you would have to hike for 30 miles or 48 kilometers to trace the lines. The secrets behind the geoglyphs have yet to be unveiled. Nobody's sure why they were made, or even more complex, who they were made by. But there have also been rock burial cairns, memory stones, and other stones carved with the deities Krishna and Ganesha. They have a guess as to how it could have been made, though. Scientists think the glyphs were created using a plow-like device being pulled by a camel. What's truly fascinating is that this is one of the biggest archaeological discoveries in Indian history, and was made by an independent researcher from France who was only checking out satellite pictures of the region using Google Earth. It was a total accident, and now real archaeologists need to find their way to the region to investigate further. Once more is uncovered about these massive geoglyphs, secrets about the ancient world they were created in could be revealed. Number 9. A disturbing ritual. In the abandoned city of Rhyolite, a small ghost town in Nevada located in Death Valley, a Google Earth user discovered something terrifying, and what most people would be shocked by. After clicking the Street View icon, the user was surprised to see what appeared to look like a group of individuals cloaked in sinister white robes. Given how they were just looking for simple directions, they were understandably disturbed to see the figures. The image of the people was creepier than anything else. There were no obvious reasons for the cloaked people to be there. A whole group of them just positioned in a circle, seemingly in the middle of a cultist ritual. However, it was soon uncovered by fellow TikTok users where the discovery was posted that these weren't actually people. The ghoulish group of strangers in robes was part of an art installation created by the Belgian artist Albert Schukalski. The outdoor exhibition in the abandoned town was installed way back in 1984, but nobody really knows it's there just outside the infamous Death Valley. It was made to be a modern representation of the Last Supper of Christ. But if you didn't know that, it would look like some kind of crazy, wacky pagan ritual. Number 8. Crashed UFO. Yet another discovery of something strange was made in the inhospitable wasteland of Death Valley. Users of Google Maps have found what looks to be a UFO crashed in the sand and surrounded by military-style tanks. There was a 340-foot, about 100-meter, crater shaped like a teardrop in the Lone Pine Unified School District of California, and an abandoned boat found near it as well as a crashed plane were discovered, though they may not have been related. The UFO in question almost looks like the Millennium Falcon the way it's shaped. At first glance, it could be mistaken for a lake because of its turquoise coloring. But curious investigators online were quick to point out it resembles the skeleton of a spacecraft. There haven't been any confirmed reports on the ground of what this wreckage really is. The thing is right in the middle of nowhere, so it's not a place most people would go to investigate. And by the time anyone does go out to the desert to look, chances are the mysterious craft will already be gone, perhaps covered up by someone who doesn't want the truth let out. Number 7. A rude message. Somebody wrote a rather nasty message about their neighbor in their backyard. This message was spotted by someone on Google Maps. Nobody knows the exact story of the neighbors. Their houses were spotted somewhere in a suburb of Salt Lake City. The aggressor in this case had mowed an unrepeatable 5-letter word starting with a B into their grass with a crude arrow pointed next door. It stuck out quite a bit on Google Maps because all the other lawns are green, properly mowed and clean. And then in the middle of all of it, in big capital letters, is a pretty hateful slur. The neighbor might not have even known about the word since it could only be seen from the air. But then again, maybe they could see it the whole time through their back window. Either way, this was a neighborly feud that got out of hand, with the whole world now knowing about it. We're just curious what the argument was about. Do you have any ideas on why the neighbors don't get along? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Ghost of the Father. In Japan, a man made a heart-wrenching discovery using Google Earth. This story begins 7 years ago when his father passed away. It was hard on the man and his whole family, but life moved on after their loss. Then recently, while looking at his own house on Google Earth, he was shocked to discover the ghostly figure of his father standing at the edge of the driveway and the street. The street view must have been recorded nearly a decade before his father had died. According to what the Japanese man said online after making his discovery, he believes his father was captured by the Google camera while standing outside waiting for his mother to return, something he did often. His father was a quiet but dedicated man, and seeing him waiting on the road for his wife was shocking, especially since he hadn't expected it. In this case, Google Earth has captured the essence of his father, waiting for the one he loved. And the user who posted their discovery hopes Google never updates the image of his home, and hopes to keep the memory of his father alive. Number 5. A pile of skeletons. Google Earth has revealed a haunting pile of bones in a place you would never expect: the radioactive ghost town of Chernobyl. While an online user was taking a nice trip around the Chernobyl exclusion zone, they came across a small collection of bones, as if somebody had been melted in nuclear waste. Because the discovery was made by looking at satellite images, it was impossible to tell whether the bones belonged to a human or an animal. However, the pile of bones had some other interesting items in it too. There was what looked like a hard hat and a gas mask. Could this be the lost pile of bones of someone who died? It's definitely a possibility. When Chernobyl had a massive meltdown in 1986 and became the worst nuclear disaster in the history of humanity, at least 28 people died from acute radiation poisoning. At least those were the official numbers released by the then Soviet Union. Nobody actually knows the extent of physical damage done to humans and how many corpses were buried after the dramatic containment efforts to contain the nuclear outbreak. But in 2005, it was predicted that nearly 5,000 people died due to radiation-related health issues. The skeleton could have been one of the workers or firefighters there on day one, absorbing radiation until he collapsed and was forgotten. And if not, it's still a creepy pile of animal bones left in what many consider to be a nuclear wasteland. Number 4. A forgotten mystery. The ex-resident of a suburban neighborhood in Florida was checking out his old stomping grounds when he came across a potential clue to a mystery dating back 22 years ago. In November of 1997, William Moult went missing. He was 40 years old at the time and was last spotted leaving a local bar just after 11 p.m. that night. But William never returned home. His girlfriend panicked, the police were phoned, and search efforts turned up with nothing. William was even posted on a website for missing people. But no matter how hard everyone looked, William was gone without a trace. Fast forward to today, the ex-resident of the neighborhood saw what appeared to be a sunken car in a pond behind a newly built home. It was hiding just at the edge of the water. He got a hold of the owner of the home, who quickly confirmed that there was definitely a sunken vehicle behind his house. Strange that the owner didn't think much of it before. Thankfully, the local sheriff got involved, the car was hauled out of the pond, and the skeleton of a man was found inside. After experts with the medical examiner's office analyzed the bones, the skeleton was identified as William Moult. He had been slowly decaying inside of his car at the bottom of a man-made pond for 22 years. But just how did this happen? He must have driven into the pond accidentally on his way home that night, right? Unfortunately, the police never released any official information on how William wound up in the pond or why nobody found him or spotted the sunken vehicle for over 20 years. You'd think an entire vehicle would be easy to spot. Number 3. Bigfoot. Bigfoot has been spotted thanks to Google Earth. At least that's what one user is claiming after finding a large, hairy monster near the side of the road while checking out the street view. After sharing the discovery online, it was viewed over 4 million times. But not everyone is convinced. Yes, it looks like Google Earth has finally caught a non-fuzzy picture of Bigfoot. However, it also kind of looks like a guy in a furry suit, which has started to become the most likely theory. The problem here is that people have been known to put on outrageous outfits and chase around Google vehicles when they appear in the neighborhood. So as far as anyone knows, this Bigfoot could really just be a random person who happened to have a Bigfoot costume in his closet, like most normal people do. But really, how likely is that? Someone would have needed to put on the Bigfoot suit awfully quickly and then catch the Google vehicle in time to be recorded. In the street view, the Bigfoot creature can clearly be seen lumbering out of the trees, and it doesn't look like a suit. So, was this a weird coincidence, or did Google Earth reveal the truth behind Bigfoot living closer to suburbia than any of us thought possible? Number 2. Antarctic monster. An Antarctic monster has been found thawed on the icy continent at the bottom of the world. The creature appears to have been dead for a long time. It's nothing more than a skeleton, and it was found about 50 miles or 80 kilometers from the Arctic coast thanks to Google Earth. Those who came across the strange creature believe it to be some kind of prehistoric beast, but nobody quite knows when it died or what exactly it was when alive. Could it be an icy cousin to the famous Loch Ness monster? The corpse of the thing seems fairly large, estimated to be around 12 feet or 3.5 meters long, though it could have been as big as 20 feet or 6 meters when alive. The big question being asked is, how did it get there? If it is some kind of prehistoric monster that was trapped under the ice, why are there no other creatures in the area? Did it scare them off? All that's been found is the single skeletal monster in the middle of nowhere. Some have said it's just the body of a dead seal, nothing that mysterious, but nobody knows for sure. It could be the rotten corpse of an unknown Antarctic monster. But we don't really know until researchers are able to dig it up from its icy grave and analyze it. Number 1. The Penis Church. Residents living in the United Kingdom are worried that the value of their homes could plummet after a recent discovery made on Google Earth made their stomachs drop. One resident was quoted saying, "We've become a laughingstock." But what could possibly terrify the neighborhood so profoundly? Well, it seems their neighborhood has been crafted in the shape of a penis. Yes, a penis. The residents live in a cul-de-sac, no pun intended, that, when viewed from above, literally looks like the male private area. Although they shouldn't worry about property values, if anything, thanks to the comedic nature of the internet, they might just increase with this discovery instead. But theirs isn't the only penis-shaped creation discovered on Google Earth. Previously, users of the app noticed the Christian Science Church in Dixon, Illinois, looks a lot like a man's genitals, at least from above it does. The roof of the church looks identical to a wiener, but at least the church had some humor about it. They posted on their Facebook feed, "Giant fig leaf coming soon," as the church officer told local news that they didn't design the church to be seen from above. Well, neither had the neighborhood in the UK. But thanks to Google Maps, Both have been outed as buildings that look like male genitalia. Hopefully, going forward, designers will start thinking about what their buildings look like from all angles before construction even starts. Number 10. Ancient and mysterious castle. An old and very mysterious castle was recently discovered in Turkey, and according to scientists, it dates back 2,800 years to the first millennium BCE, to a time when the ancient Urartu culture was battling with the more well-known Assyrians. The ancient kingdom of Urartu once spanned across much of eastern Turkey, northwestern Iran, and parts of Armenia. They emerged as a civilization in the early part of the 13th century BCE, and controlled a huge part of what is today the Middle East, but were ultimately defeated after a lengthy war with the Assyrian Empire, which is why the Assyrians are more well known today. After their defeat, historians believe the Urartu fled the area and were then defeated yet again by the Scythians, and this time wiped out for good. The ruins of the castle were found high up in the mountains at an altitude of 8,200 feet, about 2,500 meters. It's a remarkable piece of architecture, and one of the few that remains today since so many earthquakes in the area have erased what the Urartu built. Without much physical evidence, archaeologists haven't been able to properly study the Urartu or their way of life. Even the castle is nothing more than a few rocky walls, leaving a greater mystery for archaeologists to try and unravel. Number 9. The oldest observatory. The 13 towers were built in Peru in the 4th century BCE at the archaeological site of Chanquillo. So far as archaeologists can tell, it is the oldest solar observatory anywhere in the Americas. It's believed that the mysterious culture who built the observatory predates the Inca by at least 2,000 years. However, just like the Inca that came after them, the people of Chanquillo worshipped the sun. That is, until they mysteriously vanished off the face of the earth. The 13 Towers is an impressive sight, complete with a fortified temple in the very center of the towers. Here, the towers were constructed to align with the solstices. For example, the sunrise during the June solstice aligns perfectly with the very first tower, while each solar event after lines up with the next tower. In other words, the towers literally track the sun as it progresses across the sky throughout the year. Archaeologists and historians can't agree on what exactly the point was of tracking the sun, but they believe it probably played an important role in the religious practices of the ancient people. It may have also played a key role in the political landscape of the Chanquillo. Even after roughly 2,500 years, the ancient structure is incredibly well preserved. And according to the National Director of Archaeology at the Catholic University of Peru, this place could have been where the Inca originated. We know that the Inca made powerful decisions based on the sun. We also know they believed themselves to be the literal offspring of the sun. The Chanquillo may have come 1,800 years before, though their beliefs could have remained after they were gone, only to be picked up later by the Inca. Number 8. Giant giraffe-rhino. In China, scientists have uncovered fossil evidence of a new species of giant monster. This monster was taller than a giraffe, but was more closely related to a rhinoceros. It lived 26.5 million years ago and was apparently one of the largest mammals that ever roamed the earth. The bones of the extinct animal were found in the Linxia Basin, among deposits and other fossils all dating back to the late Oligocene period, or between 34 and 23 million years ago. A study of the fossil evidence was recently published in the journal Communications Biology, with scientists claiming that this giant rhinoceros weighed a whopping 21 tons or 42,000 pounds, roughly the equivalent of 4 of the biggest African elephants alive today. Considering African elephants are the largest land animals right now, and this thing literally weighed 4 of them, you can get a pretty good grasp of its titanic size. The giant giraffe-rhino also had such a long neck that it could reach up to 20 feet or 6 meters off the ground. And like a giraffe, it used its incredible height to eat leaves in the treetops. Scientists working with the Chinese Academy of Sciences say that studying the fossils will paint a clearer image of the evolutionary track of the rhino, showing how the rhinoceros went from being as big as a small skyscraper to the short, stocky, and burly creature we know today. Number 7. Mysterious Indian Mound. In Baton Rouge, houses were being built for a new subdivision when construction workers discovered something incredible. An Indian mound was identified on the property before development could begin, suggesting the site of the new subdivision was already a community between 600 to 800 years ago. From what archaeologists have been able to discern, it looks like the mound was probably constructed in honor of the leader of whichever Native American tribe called this place home. If you didn't know what you were looking for, it would be hard to recognize the mound as anything other than a gentle slope of dirt amidst the peaceful forest. However, according to Malcolm K. Schumann, the archaeologist who worked closely at the site to investigate its history, he and his team found baked earth and dark lumber, as well as artifacts like pottery and stone tools. Malcolm believes the area was heavily populated by a small settlement. There were probably houses and a temple, and he thinks much of the settlement was actually built around the house of a very important person. And it was this very important person who was probably buried underneath the central mound. We still don't know everything about the mound. It was crafted around the year 1300 AD, but the people who lived here are still unknown. Thankfully, the developer of the subdivision cordoned off the area and erected a historical marker in front of the mound, informing people it is a sacred place and preserving it for generations to come. What do you think would happen if they had continued construction over the mound? Do you think the houses would have been haunted? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. The Earth's Pulse. A very weird recent discovery came after the analysis of major geological events from the past 260 million years. Scientists and geologists investigated the complex history of our planet and came to the conclusion that the Earth has a pulse. The serious geological activity seems to follow a cycle. There is a recurring cluster of geological disasters every 27.5 million years. What this means is that the Earth is literally pulsing, but each pulse is 27.5 million years apart. Previous to the study, geologists believed that the geological events on Earth are random. But the new study suggests the most devastating of all these events happen in a cluster and that they happen at a specific time and at specific intervals. At least this is according to the author of the study, Michael Rampino with the New York University's Department of Biology. What kind of geological activity are we talking about? Think volcanoes, devastating earthquakes, and other natural events that cause mass extinctions both on land and in the sea. But don't worry. The last time the Earth pulsed, meaning the last instance of increased geological activity, was 7 million years before today, suggesting we still have about 20 million years left before complete and total devastation, if that helps at all. Number 5. Mysterious Ingot. Jason Baker, an ordinary 31-year-old guy from Plymouth in the United Kingdom, found something incredible while hunting for treasure with his metal detector. He had only been metal detecting for about 18 months when he made the exciting discovery. He was part of an event organized by the Southern Detectorist Club, basically a group-organized activity where people with metal detectors wander around a field together looking for goodies. Normally, people find a few Roman coins or nothing at all. But Jason got very lucky when he pulled a giant ingot out of the ground. This giant ingot is known as a pig, and it's believed that this particular one dates back to the year 164 AD. It's about 2 feet or 0.6 meters in length and inscribed with the name of the very famous Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius. To the untrained eye, it doesn't really look like much. It just looks like an ordinary iron ingot. But considering its historical value, the ingot could fetch a price of around $250,000 or more at auction. It is incredibly rare, and here's why. Back when the Romans invaded Britain 2,500 years ago, they began mining local lead. They cast the lead into huge blocks, stamped the name of the emperor on it, then shipped the precious metal back to Rome. Somewhere along the line, about 2,000 years ago, one of these iron blocks, also known as an ingot, got lost, covered in dirt and went undiscovered until Jason came along with his metal detector and dug it up. Number 4. Monolith in the front yard. In Washington, D.C., a mysterious monolith appeared in Bill Anderson's front yard, and he has no idea how it got there. You may remember these mysterious monoliths from earlier in 2020, with the first one appearing in the Utah desert, and then another one appearing shortly after in Romania, along with a handful of other mysterious monoliths being installed across the world. Well, now there's one in D.C., but it wasn't put in a random plot of land out in the wilderness. It was stuck in Bill Anderson's front lawn in his quiet neighborhood of Hillcrest. Even more shocking is that the silver object appeared while he was out walking with his family. Just think about how quickly the monolith needed to be installed. Bill walked out of his front door, he and his family went for a stroll around the block in the cool afternoon breeze, and when they got back, there was a giant metal monolith installed in their front yard, just a few feet from their front door. As you can imagine, Bill was a little distraught. He tried to investigate the monolith by asking his neighbors, but they hadn't seen anything. Even crazier is that nothing was spotted on Bill's security cameras, because somehow the batteries all died just seconds before the monolith was installed. If that's not highly suspicious, I don't know what is. In a local interview, Bill joked that it could have been aliens that put the thing in his yard for unknown reasons. And even though he said it jokingly, the incredible details surrounding how it got into his yard makes you wonder if there isn't some truth to the theory. Number 3. Aztec Tower of Skulls. In the center of Mexico City, archaeologists just uncovered 100 skulls at an ancient Aztec site. It's one of the creepiest ancient constructions that the Aztec ever made. It's known as the Tower of Skulls, or Huayzapantli, and it was first found roughly 5 years ago by archaeologists working with the Urban Archaeology program. But even all these years later, new discoveries are still being made. Archaeologists just unveiled 119 additional human skulls, bringing the total to 484 skulls found at the site. And believe it or not, archaeologists say there could be significantly more of them. But just what is the Skull Tower? And why would anyone build such a horrifying monument? The tower stood in the old Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. Archaeologists say it was constructed probably around 1486. It was built out of the skulls of men, women, and children, and each skull was most likely being cut from the victim of somebody killed during a sacrificial ritual. However, nobody really knows why the Tower of Skull was built or what purpose it served. It doesn't appear to be crafted of the skulls of the Aztec enemies, but rather completely random citizens chosen to be sacrificed to the great gods. And unfortunately for history, most of the Aztec structures here were destroyed by Spanish soldiers in the 1500s, including the Skull Tower. Number 2. Florida river monsters. There's been a shocking discovery made in Florida. It's not archaeological, but it's pretty wild. As you may already know, Florida has a pretty bad problem with invasive species, specifically pythons from Asia, crocodiles from Africa, and even monkeys with herpes. Yikes. As if all that wasn't bad enough, a Cape Coral resident spotted a dead river monster from the Amazonian jungle while hiking alongside the Caloosahatchee River. The monster is known as an arapaima, and they can grow to be over 10 feet or 3 meters long and over 400 pounds or 180 kilograms heavy. These river monsters are ferocious predators that, if left unchecked, could decimate the local fish population. Not only that, but they're so strong that they can be a danger to humans. An arapaima headbutting a person underwater is like getting hit full force with a sledgehammer. According to the local woman who found its bones by the river, it was bigger than her 7-year-old child. She had never seen anything quite like it before. Nobody knows how many of the destructive monsters are prowling Florida rivers, but where there's one, there are probably many more. Number 1. Prehistoric bones. In Las Vegas, construction workers stumbled upon a set of prehistoric bones while digging in someone's backyard to build a pool. Initial reports say the bones were at least 14,000 years old and come from our most recent ice age. It was actually a pretty funny discovery, because at first, the construction workers thought they had stumbled upon a crime. They thought the bones belonged to a dead person and phoned the police. But after a bit of investigating, the bones were identified as belonging to an ancient species of horse or another similar mammal from that time. Horses, giant sloths, and all kinds of weird monsters used to roam across Las Vegas and Nevada before humans ever showed up. So it's not that surprising to find bones here. Plus, the backyard is located close to the Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument, where mammoth bones were also recently discovered. Number 10. Ancient civilization. When the Spanish adventurer Gaspar de Carvajal visited the Amazon jungle in 1541, he described cities that gleamed white and a land that was unbelievably fruitful. In other words, the Spanish adventurer described an ancient and powerful civilization that is not around today. There is no evidence of a gleaming white city in the Ecuadorian jungle where Gaspar was traveling. Could the Amazon jungle be hiding the remains of an advanced civilization that vanished between the 1500s and now? It is definitely a possibility. One of the biggest clues that points to complex societies in the Amazon is the presence of something called terra preta, which is an area of fertile soil that scientists know is created by permanent human occupation. Terra preta is an accumulation of organic matter and ash from fires, and it has been found all throughout the Amazon. Here's what else scientists have found. There are clusters of fruit trees at certain archaeological sites, suggesting people were cultivating fruit thousands of years ago. But if this is true, where did all the people go? Assuming there were millions of people living in the jungle, it's hard to believe they just vanished into thin air. One of the prevailing theories is that when the Spanish invaders made contact with the ancient civilizations of the Amazon, they gave them diseases. These diseases, which the Amazonians had no defense against, ravaged the civilizations and left their great cities empty. Number 9. Purring monkey. Between 2010 and 2013, 441 new species of plants and animals were discovered in the vast rainforest of the Amazon. Among these fantastic discoveries was a monkey with a rather unusual trait. According to scientists that found the monkey, it purrs like a cat. The species is known as the Kakata titi monkey. It's one of the 20 different species of titi monkey, all of which live in the Amazon. If you've never heard of titi monkeys, don't feel bad. Most people haven't. The baby monkeys from the species actually purr when they feel comfortable and happy with another monkey. Scientists aren't exactly sure why the monkey purrs like a cat. It doesn't seem to have any value in the world of survival. And to be honest, considering humans haven't even fully figured out why cats purr, unlocking the secrets of the purring monkey are quite a way off. There are other pretty fascinating animals found along with the purring titi monkey, including 84 fish, 58 amphibians, 22 reptiles, and 18 birds. Scientists found a flame-patterned lizard in the Colombian Amazon never before seen in the wild, a frog the size of your thumbnail in Guyana that's on the verge of extinction, and a new type of vegetarian piranha that can weigh up to 9 pounds and only feasts on plants. The only thing the Amazon is definitely hiding is more amazing animals. What's your favorite animal from the Amazon? Which one do you think is the scariest? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 8. Underwater etchings. There was a drought recently in the Brazilian Amazon that resulted in an amazing discovery. It happened near the jungle city of Manaus. Underwater etchings were discovered when the drought caused the river levels to decrease. They were first spotted by a fisherman in the Rio Negro. The water fell to its lowest level in over 100 years, and it left thousands of locals stranded as their roaring rivers turned into dry ditches. The water levels have gone up since, covering the ancient underwater etchings once more. But luckily, archaeologists managed to get to Manaus first to take photographs of the mysterious artwork. As it turns out, the symbols and pictures carved into the rock go back at least 7,000 years ago. The sketches depict faces, snakes, and other strange animals. This is further evidence that the Amazon was home to a large civilization. The president of the Brazilian Society for Archaeology, Eduardo Neves, says that the etchings were made at a time when the water level was significantly lower. However, there is no name for whoever made these rock carvings. The people who left the marks are now ghosts. And it really makes you wonder just how many other archaeological wonders have been erased by the ever-shifting landscape of the Amazon jungle. Number 7. Jungle Guardians. Deep in the heart of the Amazon, there's a tribe guarding the sacred land against all the horrors of the outside world. There's a very specific tribe acting as the jungle guardians to the Amazon. They are known as the Wayapi, and they've lived in the remote Brazilian state of Amapá for hundreds of years in complete isolation. They live in harmony with the rainforest. They support their way of life by using the trees and rivers, and they are trying to keep their tribal lands safe from miners and loggers. But just what exactly do the Jungle Guardians believe in? The Wayapa believe they were created by a divine being known as Janjara. This being played a song on a long flute made from the wood of the Imbaúba tree. As he played the flute, the Wayapa were born into the world. They lived with no knowledge of the outside world until 1973. When they made contact with the first non-indigenous group ever. Why did this happen? It was because the Brazilian government tried to build a new highway through their land. The project was abandoned eventually, though enough of the highway was still built that hunters and miners could easily reach the remote lands of the Wayapi. What happened when all these outsiders made contact with the tribe became infected with diseases, and their way of life became disrupted. In the 1980s, the tribe banded together to take control of the area, but they have never been safe. Even today, the rest of Brazil is slowly but surely fighting to end the long and peaceful existence of the Wayapi. Number 6. Alien in the trees. In the Brazilian rainforest, something that may have come from outer space has been spotted. From what anyone can tell, there may be aliens wandering around the jungle. And honestly, what a better place for them to hide. This alien was captured on a video made by 2 British tourists visiting a remote village. They suppose that alien only appears in a single image. The tourists had taken snapshots of the local village kids, and it was when they inspected the pictures later that they discovered something just beyond the village, in the background, wandering through the foliage as if completely normal. The strange creature appears to have a bald, oddly shaped head. It looked to be naked. It also looked exactly like a small grayish-green alien stumbling out of its ship. Nobody in the photograph seemed to realize what was happening just behind them. Perhaps they were just used to seeing that alien. Or maybe it was invisible and only showed up in the film after the incident. Even stranger is that the picture also shows a sliver of light behind the alien that could have been part of its spacecraft. We don't know exactly where this was taken, or if the tourists ever witnessed the mysterious creature again. And for that matter, we can't possibly imagine what an alien would be doing in the Amazon jungle. It could be that they have their base out there, hidden in the greatest wilderness on Earth. Number 5. Witches. Deep in the Peruvian rainforest, there are apparently witches. According to a report from The Guardian, a woman accused of practicing witchcraft was recently burned alive in an indigenous community in one of the remotest parts of the Amazon jungle in Peru. The indigenous community is called the Xiringamazu Alto, and they banded together to sentence Rose Villa Yaranyanka to death based on some pretty flimsy evidence that she was a witch. This woman was 73 years old. The incident happened in the middle of September, but didn't reach the authorities for months because of how truly remote the community is. Someone present at the execution had actually made a cell phone video of the woman being burned to death. The video showed Rosa with her hands tied, the woman trapped on a pile of dry logs and branches. The man in the video then soaked the woman in gasoline and threw a match onto the fire. Rosa could be heard screaming until the screaming stopped and she was dead. Afterward, the villagers allowed her body to continue burning for 3 days to get rid of all the evidence. According to the prosecutor of the case, Hugo Mauricio, witchcraft is quite common in the area. Well, not witchcraft exactly, more like accusations of witchcraft. Something similar happened in 2015, when a pregnant woman was accused of being a witch and beaten so badly she miscarried her baby. Number 4. Hidden symbols. In a remote jungle valley in the Amazon, a huge monolith dating back 2,000 years and decorated with strange symbols and patterns has been identified thanks to 3D scanning. This happened in northern Peru and was possible because of Jason Kleinheinz, an engineer who was determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. He and his team traveled into the valley of the Utcobamba River and used their Artex 3D scanner from a distance of 13,000 feet to survey the area. They found the monolith almost completely covered in undergrowth. They estimated its weight to be around a ton. It stood only around 2 feet tall and was only 10 feet wide. In other words, it was actually a pretty small monument. But what's really strange is that the rock used to make it was not sourced locally, meaning it had to be brought in from somewhere else. Even more mysterious are its details. The monolith is covered in bizarre carvings, some just barely visible to the naked eye. One of the main carvings is that of a feline figure believed to be some kind of ancient god worshipped by whoever lived in the area. Monument was probably at the center of a sacred place, though what went on here and why the ancient people abandoned it is still a mystery. Number 3. El Mayantu. In the depths of the Amazon rainforest, there is apparently a monster called El Mayantu. According to the local legends, El Mayantu is a type of goblin creature with the scaly body of a reptile and the face of a toad. The creature has the ability to shapeshift. It can camouflage itself easily to disappear, and it lives high in the forest canopy where most people don't bother to look. And, believe it or not, there have actually been sightings of this bizarre creature. Most of the sightings are reported in the wetlands of the Peruvian rainforest. El Mayantu is not an evil spirit like other mythical inhabitants of the jungle. Instead, the weird toad monster is said to come to the aid of humans when they need assistance, but only humans that deserve its help. If you're there to destroy the jungle or to harm those who live in it, El Mayantu can be bad news. But just who exactly believes in this thing, for real? It's the native Yagua Indians who live near Iquitos that believe in the El Mayantu. Some of the people here actually worship El Mayantu as a deity they say has the power to heal people. Number 2. Titanoboa. Let's move on to a very real monster that once ruled the Amazon jungle, and could be around today. It's known as the Titanoboa, and it's a 40-foot snake so big that if it were alive today, it could probably swallow a tribal village in a single bite. The first evidence of this prehistoric monster was found in Colombia, when a fossil was discovered 60 miles from the Caribbean coast. About 60 million years ago, just shortly after the dinosaurs went extinct, this part of the world was a swampy jungle. It was hotter than it is today, wetter, and the animals were bigger. It also received significantly more rain, nearly double. It was the perfect environment for a serpent that weighed more than a ton. According to the Smithsonian, the Titanoboa would have looked very similar to a modern boa constrictor, but would have behaved more like an anaconda. At the thickest part of its body, it was roughly 3 or 4 feet. To put that into perspective, it would barely have been able to fit through a standard door, and since it was 40 feet long, it wouldn't even have needed to strangle you. It could have literally just hit you with its tail like some video game boss and broke all your bones. The really terrifying part is that some people claim the Titanoboa is still hiding in the lakes and rivers of the Amazon today. There is no evidence to support this, but some claim, somewhere in an unexplored part of the jungle, the Titanoboa is hiding. Number 1. Man of the Hole. Hiding in the Amazon is a man nicknamed the Man of the Hole. He's believed to be the last surviving member of his tribe. Not too long ago, video footage was released from Brazil's Indigenous Affairs Department showing who they believe to be the Man of the Hole, busy chopping down some trees with his axe in the remote state of Rondônia. Unbeknownst to the man himself, the Indigenous Affairs Department has been keeping an eye on him for the past 22 years. This is because back in the 1980s, farmers and illegal loggers began to destroy his tribal territory. Then, in 1995, an attack by cattle ranchers killed every last member of his tribe. He was, and still is, the only survivor. This is obviously tragic, It's like watching the last white rhino die, knowing there's nothing that can be done to save it. Nobody knows his real name, they don't know the name of his murdered tribe, and they don't even know what language he speaks. The only reason he's still alive is because the small territory he lives in is finally protected by the government. Nobody has actually been able to get close to the guy either. The last time somebody tried to contact him, he shot arrows at them. Would you dare journey into the Amazon? Number 10. Song Dynasty Shipwreck. From the depths of the South China Sea, an ancient cargo ship dating back to the Song Dynasty between the years 960 and 1279 AD has been salvaged. At the time of its creation, it was an impressive ship, still holding a cargo of amazing artifacts with reminders to its past upon its discovery. Ancient pieces of treasure made from gold, silver, and copper were found with the wreckage. In fact, there were so many treasures that a museum was built just to hold what was found in the wreckage. According to Chinese archaeologists, this is the earliest, biggest, and best preserved merchant ship discovered in the China Sea, and the only one of its kind that has been trading goods along the maritime Silk Road from old China to the rest of the known world. Some of the artifacts include porcelain products like bowls and pots. In total, there were also 17,000 copper coins uncovered. There were personal belongings too, like bracelets and rings. This would suggest the ship was filled with merchants and possibly passengers too. The ship itself was 72 feet or 22 meters long and sank because of unknown reasons. The discovery remains a crucial help in studying old world trading and way of life. Number 9. Icelandia. A secret sunken continent may have just been discovered hiding beneath the small island nation of Iceland. And no, it doesn't contain the lost city of Atlantis, sadly, though that would be incredible. The international team of geologists who discovered the mysterious continent have given it the name Icelandia. Extremely original, we know. Researchers are saying the underwater landmass likely stretches from Greenland to Europe, meaning that if it weren't under the sea, it would create a land bridge stretching all the way from France to Greenland, making it almost possible to travel from North America to Europe by land. The continent has a surface area of roughly 230 square miles, or around 600,000 square kilometers. Here's where the discovery gets even more amazing. If scientists can prove beyond a doubt that the landmass exists, even if it's deep below the surface of the ocean, it will prove the ancient existence of the supercontinent Pangaea, and that it never completely broke apart 50 million years ago. Pieces of it only sank. Number 8. New species of shark. A new species of ancient shark has been discovered, and it is as terrifying as it sounds. An international team of researchers led by the scientist Sebastian Stumpf from the University of Vienna was the first to uncover the fossil of the prehistoric beast, which is its very own new genus and species. The fossil itself was discovered in the Kimmeridge Clay Formation in England, a small collection of sedimentary rocks that formed underwater during the Upper Jurassic period almost 150 million years ago. The shark species has been named Hybodontiform. This breed of ancient animal goes back about 361 million years and is believed to be very closely related to modern sharks. However, they went extinct alongside the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. This shark had huge teeth that it used to rip apart prey, though it wasn't actually that big, only about 10 feet or 3 meters in length. Big enough to scare us, though. Scientists are still trying to figure out the reasons behind why a shark species like this one were wiped off the planet after the asteroid impact, while our own modern sharks survived and are still thriving today. The realization might just be able to help in conservation efforts today. Number 7. Plutonium from space. A very interesting radioactive element from outer space has just been found embedded in the crust of the Earth, located deep beneath the sea. The element is plutonium, which you might recognize from just about every spy movie where the villain is trying to get a hold of it to destroy the planet through nuclear weapons. Specifically, researchers found the plutonium-244 isotope, which they believe arrived on Earth along with another rare metal called iron-60. Both elements may form during supernovas out in space. They say the immense heat from the explosion of a supernova, a star blowing itself apart at the very end of its life cycle, causes the elements to speed across the universe and eventually land on our planet. Understanding how elements like these are formed is one of the biggest remaining questions right now in the world of physics. According to physicists working with the Australian National University, half of all elements heavier than iron come from the hearts of stars through the process of fusion. But there is another collection of elements that are born from within an even more explosive environment, such as a supernova. The collision of two neutron stars, or a neutron star falling into a black hole. Space is confusing and overwhelming, I know. The bottom line here is that plutonium-244 was discovered stuck in the Earth's crust at the bottom of the sea, and it has been there for at least 80 million years, slung across the vastness of space after a star larger than the entirety of a planet exploded. And if that doesn't sound crazy, we don't know what does. If given the chance, would you ever travel to space? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Bloated whale. Off the coast of Australia, a fisherman discovered what he thought was some kind of floating alien ship bobbing along the ocean waves. The object appeared smooth, a whitish-pink color, and it looked like some kind of inflatable extraterrestrial vessel that crash-landed out at sea. It wasn't until the Australian fisherman got close to it that he realized he was dealing with something organic. The stench of rotting putridity assaulted his nostrils and made him gag. It wasn't a hot air balloon or an alien vessel that he found, but it was definitely something dead and bloated. According to the unlucky fisherman, Mark Watkins, he had accidentally uncovered a dead whale. Not quite sure what he had expected. He realized it was a whale due in part to its smell. But how can a dead whale look so frightening? The gross phenomenon happens when a whale dies. Its stomach fills up with gas and causes the whale's corpse to bloat, actually similar to what happens to our own bodies after death. This creates a floating hot air balloon of rotting flesh. Humans don't exactly start floating up into the air after death, but it is entirely possible to float up once in water. Mark Watkins said there were sharks circling the ballooned whale's body, and so it was a bit of a surprise that it was even still floating and not torn to shreds for the shark's lunch. Mark didn't wait to see what the sharks would do, since he didn't really feel like having a whale's inflated stomach bursting guts all over his boat. He took some pictures, sailed away, and nobody ever saw the horrifying thing again. Number 5. A giant crustacean. A new species of crustacean was recently found very deep in the ocean inside the Atacama Trench off the coast of Peru and Chile. The new crustacean is a type of amphipod endemic to the trench, meaning it doesn't live anywhere else in the world. What's really crazy is that the amphipod is roughly twice the size of its nearest relative, making it a very real monster, in size at least. The creature was discovered roughly 16,000 feet or 4,900 meters below the ocean surface, in the deepest part of the trench known as Richards Deep. Researchers also found creepy isopods with spider legs, pale snailfish, and other bizarre scavengers. The amphipods are plentiful down in this region, and they actually play a pretty critical role in their local ecosystem by eating whatever food sinks down to the bottom of the trench. To give you an idea of just how deep in the ocean these little crustacean creatures live, the Atacama Trench measures roughly as deep as the Andes Mountains are tall. No wonder it took so long for scientists to discover the species. It took years to even make equipment that was able to withstand pressures associated with ocean depths this far down. Number 4. Mysterious body of kidnapped victim. Something so tragic that it's hard to even talk about was discovered 3,000 feet or about 900 meters beneath the surface of the sea off the coast of Spain, near the port of Chimaera. A sports bag was found by Spanish rescuers tied to an anchor resting on the seabed. Inside the sports bag was the body of 6-year-old Olivia Gimeno, a young girl who had been kidnapped by her own father. She had last been seen over a month before her body's discovery. Local authorities carried out an autopsy to confirm the girl's identity, and the family had been informed. But unfortunately, the girl had been taken along with her younger sister, who was not discovered. What was found was a second sports bag, only this one was empty. Authorities believe the sister was also tied to the anchor, but somehow slipped out of the bag and will probably never be found since she's likely to have become fish food by now. As for how the young girls ended up deep in the sea, they were kidnapped by their father, who took them without consent and left the country on a boat. The boat was later found empty, but the murderous husband is still missing and at large. We send our condolences to the family of the victims and hope justice can one day be served. Number 3. Alien HQ. Shocking footage has revealed what could be an underwater alien headquarters about 2,000 feet or 600 meters below the surface. Yes, we understand how crazy that sounds. The potential alien base was found thanks to Google Earth. Internet sleuths found the satellite image of an aircraft that appears to have been flying very close to the surface, too close for comfort. It was somewhere between the west coast of the United States and the Santa Catalina Island. Below the craft is what conspiracy theorists say looks like an artificial structure partially hidden due to the blackness of the ocean. The area also happens to be a hotspot for UFO sightings and even alleged alien abductions. And if what the conspiracy theorists say is to be believed, some of these abductees have reported being taken to an underground base. Well, that underground base may actually be an underwater base, and the plane caught flying over it may have been doing reconnaissance or possibly bringing more abductees to the secret lair. No official organization has come out to deny the claims, since they do seem more than a little far-fetched. The base has also been debunked by other internet sleuths who claim the underwater structure isn't a base at all, but simply an oddly formed piece of rock. The truth is that nobody can really be sure what's down there, whether it's natural or of another world. It is fun to guess what could possibly be lurking beneath the depths, though. Number 2. Lair of the worms. Scientists have discovered the lair of a marine worm species on the floor of the ocean. The worms have long since died and have been turned into fossils. But 20 million years ago, when they thrived, they were pretty frightening little critters. These ancient giant worms lived in underground dens drilled into the ocean floor, where they waited for unsuspecting fish to swim by so that they could strike just like snakes and pull them down into their burrows. According to the Smithsonian, researchers believe the fossilized worms could be the earliest fossils ever found of an ambush predator. The lair of the worm was discovered on the sea floor off the coast of Taiwan. The lair itself is about 7 feet long and 1 inch, or about 2.1 centimeters wide. Just imagine an earthworm with a whole lot of teeth living in a den in your garden 7 feet or 2 meters long. It's kind of terrifying. These worms could probably grow anywhere from a few inches long to over 10 feet or 3 meters. They also had sharp teeth to rip apart prey, and a single antenna that they used to detect motion in the water. It's strange to think that worms were once fearsome predators, but that just goes to show you how mysterious the ocean, especially the ocean of the past, is. Number 1. Eternal green sea turtle. Scientists have discovered what they're calling a group of eternal green sea turtles living in the East Pacific waters off the coast of La Jolla in San Diego. Fascinatingly, the turtles were witnessed socializing with snorkelers and divers, something never really seen before with sea turtles. The behavior has left scientists more than a little confused. There are 4 resident turtles here living in an unprotected part of the coastline, which scientists say is also unusual. It's also strange because the turtles are swimming in cold water, which they aren't really supposed to like. But even though the behavior seems to be a bit strange, scientists say it's a good thing. According to Megan Hanna, a marine biologist from San Diego, the eternal green sea turtles are the result of 30 years of conservation. The population of green sea turtles may have increased in the last few years, and what we're seeing now is turtles moving into new territory and adapting. Of course, the sea turtles don't actually live for eternity. You probably would have heard of them before if that was the case. But the fact that they're living in such an unusual place and seem to be thriving, along with the fact that they've become accustomed to humans and actually hang out with divers, well, this makes them very special. So scientists will keep an eye on the eternal sea turtles to see what they get up to next. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite oceanic discovery? Is there anything about the sea that fascinates or terrifies you? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more awesome videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.